Welcome to this week's episode of Lagnapod. I'm Rob Holbert, your host, and I have a group of folks here. Everybody introduce yourselves. Sound off.
Ashley Trice.
Scott Johnson.
Brady Petrie.
Tommy Hicks.
Tommy Hicks here. Okay.
Oh, I'd like to point out in the
Yes.
podcast studio here
Yes.
at Lanyap World Headquarters.
The rectangular round table, as I like to call it.
Yes, we are sitting underneath our 2022 First Place Award for Best Podcast Series that
There
we
we
just
go.
hung up today.
Yes. Well, we get around to things eventually.
We found it under a pile of discarded newspapers in the corner of the room.
It does really look, it's pretty spanking in here.
It makes it look taller.
It does.
We need to have these things up on the wall because we're going to be having some mayoral candidates eventually visiting this room. And in fact, I think maybe even today we'll have something come by. So, which is the segue into what we're going to talk about first is the mayoral campaign has picked up a little bit more. We've got, I think Paul Prine had just jumped in last week. And since that time, we've had a few things go on. I think the first one of those was that, after Prine joined the race on last Tuesday and then did not take any questions from the media, the following Wednesday, he went on Sean Sullivan's show on 106.5 and said that he had moved to Mobile. And said basically he didn't think it was a big deal, that people really didn't care about it, but he's moved to Mobile. We did a little research. We've called him several times, texted him several times. Brady, I know you've called, texted, gone by his supposed house.
Up until this point, he's been very, cordial with me. So he's answered my phone calls, texts, but nothing on this.
But not on this. So he has not answered or any of these things.
And he's turned down interviews with almost everybody else too.
Right,
I think.
Right.
Yeah.
But so Scott, you also looked up where he lived and found the guy who lives where he says he lives now, and found the guy who rents the house to him. And you asked him some questions, right?
Yeah, I was interested to know, is this a kind of in-kind contribution? Has he moved in?
Is he a Prine supporter?
Yeah,
et cetera?
Is he going to vote for him? And he's basically kind of hit around the bush there. Said he didn't know if he was actually living there or not yet. He has a property management company.
He didn't know when he had started renting, and didn't know if he had moved in.
Yeah, and
and didn't know if he was going to vote for him or not.
Yeah, all of which he told me.
Those are the things he said,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, very nice guy, I guess. And anyway,
on the record, he said those things.
Yes. And then later to find out that this guy that I called is actually an admin of the Supporters of Prine, Paul Prine Facebook group, which is kind of formed after he had the fallout with Sandy Simpson. Big, very pro-Prine group, and he's a very frequent poster. Has actually posted about where Prine lives in some of his posts. Yeah. I think he knew exactly Paul's situation, I'm going to guess, and anyway, so pretty apparent that he's a very pro-Paul kind of guy. So interested.
Pro-Paul Prine.
Pro-Paul Prine, yeah.
That's
PPP.
really hard to say.
It is. It's not easy to say. Pro-Paul Prine, but so, yeah. So I mean, so this guy tells us that it's so we're still kind of in a situation where it's like I mean, it's a simple question to answer, and I'll just go straight on. I don't care if he's living here right now or not. I don't care. The state law
doesn't matter
the law is 90 days out.
Yeah.
I don't care if he says I'm not moving into Mobile until 90 days before the election. Great. That's his prerogative. If people can make their,
right.
But what I don't like is if someone says they are living here and they're not. I'm not saying he's not, but he just doesn't seem to want to answer this question, which is a very easy question to answer. And we have asked multiple ways, multiple times, and they refuse to answer it. And it does look a little weird to have a guy who's your admin on your Facebook page, who's renting it to you and who's kind of being deceptive with the media for whatever reason.
Sure.
Yeah. It's just a little strange, but
NBC 15 reported that, Prine was served at a Saraland house,
12 days earlier.
12 days earlier. So, there is no residency kind of like standards for Alabama, the state. You don't have to live in a city for any amount of time to actually say I'm a resident there. You just have to have an address and you have to then you can go register to vote there. So
you sign a lease, so you've got to
as long as you can show that you have a residency and an address,
Yeah, I mean, I get that. It's I mean, the question of it is, are we trying to meet the letter of the law or the spirit of the law? And that's the question I have. I mean, I get it. He was a cop here for 27 years. He's been out on the streets. He got shot in the line of duty. He knows Mobile. I don't have a qualm with that. But over the years, we have dealt with this issue repeatedly. And for whatever reason, there are always people who kind of push the envelope. And I'm not saying he is. I'm just saying at this point, he has not proven to anybody that that's where he lives. And he does seem to be dodging the question. But I mean, years ago, Bess Rich, who is city council lady, she had her homestead exemption on a home in Fairhope or over on the Eastern Shore, not her home in Mobile, which is kind of your primary residence is what it says. That's where your homestead exemption is supposed to be.
Yep.
So that as soon as it was brought up, she quickly changed it back to Mobile. But we had an issue with Council President C.J. Small a few years ago. People were saying he has a very nice, very high dollar house that is outside the city limits on Dog River. He says he lives over near Oakley and in the right next to his mortuary. But
I mean, this happened. The county commissioner that lived in the
Juan
shed.
Chastain.
Yeah, I mean, this has even happened.
Now, he was the best one.
Yeah, he had a shed.
He lived in a tool shed.
Yeah,
yes,
shed
allegedly.
that had a padlock as
a padlock on the outside. Yes, he had
which is really...
Yes, he took people to a tool shed and said, "This is where I live."
Tiny house living.
Yes, he was. He was a cutting edge on tiny house. He did not survive.
I mean, this is happening.
His gambit did not survive.
But this is happening on a statewide level too. Yeah. Tommy Tuberville is asking. Is thinking about running for governor. Everybody knows he lives in Santa. On 30A.
Yeah,
he's got a little 3-2 in Auburn that his kids lived in college as his residency. I mean, it's just like, do we care about this or not? I mean, I care about it. I personally do. I mean, personally, to me, if you're going to be the mayor or city council person or whatever, and you're going to tell us you live in town, you should live in town. I
think that you should live in town.
And you certainly shouldn't lie about it.
And
I mean, if your take is, I don't think people care. I'm meeting the letter of the law, then you should say that and let the people decide. I
got my driver's license changed. I don't really care. Yeah. Fine. That's fine. But just I don't want to play this stupid game of cat and mouse if that's what's going on. I mean, Brady, you've been by that place several times. You said it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
There's nothing that looks like there's anybody living there at this point.
Hasn't been a car in the driveway. Nothing in the yard is moved. I mean, it just looks like it's there for show,
right.
And there's not been any kind of indication.
Again, it's Paul, give us a call. Anyway, but and then we had the other day also we had the first push poll of the year, which was interesting. That came out. I would say it was a very clearly pro Spiro Chirigatis poll.
I'm just shortening that to Spiro Goddess.
Spiro Goddess.
We had a initial poll actually formatted pretty similarly several months ago, but it did have that same feeling that it wasn't necessarily about surveying what the results are right now. It almost felt like a market research.
Well, it is. I mean, those kind of push polls. I mean, what they're doing, they're trying to get out good information about one candidate and maybe derogatory information about other candidates.
Did you know she was a county commissioner and also killed puppies?
Yeah.
But everybody,
it's really. How does that make you feel about?
On there, that was a joke.
How does that make you feel about her?
Yeah.
Are you more likely to vote for her now that you know she kills puppies? I mean, it slammed Connie Hudson a couple different places, basically making note of her signature soccer field project, which is expensive. It has. I mean, I'm not saying it's untrue.
By their behavior, they feel like they are each other's biggest threat.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely.
But I mean, with Chirigatis, it was
do you know that he's the youngest judge and he did this and he's the first one to do a Nye's Law, and also that he ran his family's barbecue business. And what do you think about his wife, Lucy Greer? Do you like her grocery stores? That kind of stuff. It was a little like, I mean, it was a little obvious who's, at least on whose behalf it was done.
No, definitely.
Nobody on that.
And I think all
nobody
of
on
us
that side will say they did it.
He
but
owns a
it's,
barbecue restaurant?
Yeah.
Where? Which one?
In Dothan. Dothan, yes, apparently. So, but yeah, so it was. But I think what it did, it definitely served as a opening salvo on some of the other people, I think, to a degree. I mean, I think I would say that it's irritated some, from what I understand. That there's a level of irritation. The question is whether that's going to result in retaliation. I would imagine it will. I think you're going to see it coming. It's just seems like it's getting a little saucy here. We're getting that.
Was that a barbecue restaurant, Joe?
It was a barbecue joke. Who's ready to handle the sauciness?
I'm disappointed in myself that I didn't realize that's what you were talking about.
That wasn't.
Can they take a little gentle ribbing?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, there it is.
There it is.
I think on that note, we're going to end this first segment, and we're going to take a quick break and come back and talk to Tommy Hicks about some sports, and we're getting into that exciting time of the year, basketball. Yes, it's exciting.
God.
We'll be right back.
Down in our Alabama town, Lanyard Daily is on the beat. For just $6.50, it's all the news, keeping local folks in the loop. Oh, Lanyard Daily, every single morning, catching up on stories while the coffee's pouring. The local truths on every page, news for the folks of every age.
It's just $6.50 a month for Mobile's daily news, Lanyard Daily. Get signed up now at lanyardmobile.com and help keep Mobile funky.
Down in our Alabama town, Lanyard Daily's on the beat. For just $6.50, it's all the news, keeping local folks in the loop. Oh, Lanyard Daily, every single morning, catching up on stories while the coffee's pouring. The local truths on every page, news for the folks of every age.
And we are back. It is basketball tournament time.
It's madness time.
March Madness. I have some madness. But the maddest were the folks out at USA because they got screwed. They got really yanked around a little bit.
I think that's the word.
I think that's the word. So tell us the story. What's the backstory on this thing?
Okay, so the South Alabama lost in the semifinals of the conference tournament, Sun Belt Conference tournament. They knew they were not going to the NCAA, and
not going to the big dance.
Not going to the big dance, but there was a smaller dance right behind it, the NIT, and you have to meet certain criteria to be invited to that as well. They didn't believe that they were going to be selected for that. They thought season was over.
Right, yeah.
So Sunday night, after the selection committee has made their selections, their at-large selections for the NCAA tournament,
right.
Then the NIT comes out and announces their 32-team tournament and their selections. So it's later into the night as it gets going.
South is not originally on these 32 teams, right?
South is not selected for either tournament.
Right.
So about 9...
Pack up your sneakers and go home.
Yes. You pack it up, you're done. Start recruiting.
Right.
You'll get there next year. About 9:30 at night, Richie Riley, the South Alabama head coach, gets a phone call from Dan Gavitt, who is the director
head
of the
troublemaker
NIT management. He's also an NCAA guy.
Right.
Tournament selection, all that stuff.
Gotcha.
And the Sun Belt Conference commissioner, Keith Gill.
Yes, both of them.
Both of them call and say, hey, would you guys like to play in the NIT? And he says, well, of course we would like to play. So we're in. And he said, yes, we've had a team drop out, and you guys are going to fill that
You're
spot.
in.
Correct. He said, can I tell my team?
Yes.
Yes. Feel free to tell your team. Tell those guys they're going to play in the NIT.
Yeah. Which he does.
Which he does.
Yes.
Around 11 o'clock, phone rings again. It's those same two guys. Hey, remember what we told you earlier?
Did you receive an AI phone call that sounded like us earlier?
You can scratch that.
Yeah.
We've had a little problem here, and you're not in anymore. So the crux of that was that UC Riverside was originally selected for the NIT, but they had covered their bases and accepted an invitation into the College Basketball Invitational,
okay,
the CBI.
All right,
which is
a lesser tournament. Yes,
it's
that noise would indicate a lesser tournament.
A much lesser tournament. But hearing from the NIT people, they said, wait. Okay, we're in. We'll accept that invitation. And so the NIT people, instead of doing what they should have done, was said, dude, we invited you.
Yeah.
You said you're in another tournament. We've moved along.
Yeah.
We have found another team. Enjoy the CBI.
Right.
But instead they went, oh, okay, come on
We'd
back.
rather have Riverside.
Come back. Hey, Keith, why don't you call Richie and tell him he's not in the tournament anymore? So this was not well-received message in Mobile, Alabama.
Yeah.
I love that Richie Riley got on his social media site and said it was a cut and paste apology.
Cut and paste apology.
That's pretty good.
Nice.
That's pretty strong.
Very nice.
That's pretty strong.
So it's kind of like, okay, well, that was just it. Sorry, buddy. And hung up, Yeah.
And then it became like this firestorm on social media that everybody jumped in and said, what are you guys doing? What is the
they got slammed nationally pretty hard.
They got slammed very hard and deservedly so.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
It should have been, okay, you made your choice.
Yes.
Enjoy.
Right. Yeah.
You want the cherry on top of this story, though?
What is that?
UC Riverside played last night, their first round game in the NIT. Final score, 101-62. Santa Clara beat them by 39 points.
So they invited this team to just get their doors beat off.
And I'm just saying, maybe the CBI would have been a better choice.
Perhaps.
For Riverside.
Yes. Couldn't have been a worse choice. Yeah, I don't know.
So there's no sympathy anywhere.
Well, this is a question I have for you. So after the Jags were offered this,
yes,
were the guys from NIT and Sunbelt, were they still working the phones on the other side trying to get this team back in, or did the team call them back and said, hey?
Apparently, from what I've gathered, the team contacted NIT and said, hey, we've dropped out of that.
Hold the phone. We heard that we were maybe selected.
Yeah, we're on your turn. Hey, we're with you.
Okay. All right. Well, that's not as bad as it could be if they were still working the phones trying to get somebody else in.
No, the bad part was the NIT/NCAA
it's bad.
Group saying, welcome back.
It's bad all the way. Yeah. I mean, why would they do that? What would possess them to do that?
It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, it doesn't.
That's just a total screw job.
Well, in the world, in the age of conspiracies, I'm going to say
whether it was
kickback.
South Alabama or Akron or whoever, you just happen to be a local team, but you just dumped on them.
Yeah. Well, it's I think that's pretty rude stuff, pretty bad stuff.
Yeah.
Now let's move on to other stuff that is also basketball related. The Final Four, the March Madness is starting tomorrow, right?
Correct. Well, you had your play-in games, two play-in games last night. Alabama State, one on a last-second shot where they threw the ball the length of the court and made a basket underneath to win.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But their prize for winning that game, they get to play Auburn on Thursday.
So they get to get destroyed. Okay, that's But
thanks for stopping by.
Yeah,
the school 30 minutes down the road from you is
it's coming here
with open arms.
Yeah, excited to see you
to Lexington, Kentucky.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so that's cool. But now we are all currently filling out our brackets. We're feverishly filling out brackets these days, right? Everybody's doing this.
Oh, yeah.
It's the American way.
It's the best time.
I've used AI to try to help me with mine this year. We're going to see. We'll see how much AI knows.
I was about to say, how has that gone so far? Has it?
AI is just picking nothing but first and second place. I'm like, okay,
so
AI.
He's going chalk.
I'm asking for some upsets.
If you want underdogs,
I've told
a balanced approach. Yeah,
I've asked it a few questions. I'm just saying, I've asked it to
it's like working with your financial advisor.
Yeah.
Do we want to go high?
Do we want the high risk? Do we want high risk, or do you want low risk? I'm like, so yeah. So you, Tommy, though, you're not AI. I'm
not AI.
You're still TH.
I'm just stupid. I'm just.
So you're doing it yourself. What do you got going? What are your picks? What do you see happening?
All right.
I want to see if AI and you match up.
We probably will not.
I see a name on there that AI folks picked.
I totally did all three brackets. I did the men's tournament, the women's tournament, and the NIT.
Okay, you're insane.
I don't have a life in it.
Right, clearly.
Want to try it. If you can embarrass yourself with one
have
tournament.
you done something to where you're sleeping on the couch currently? What's going on?
Exactly. Why not embarrass yourself with three brackets instead of just one?
Right.
I think I'll go all out. So, in the men's tournament, I've got Auburn playing Florida, Duke playing Tennessee in the Final Four. I have Florida beating Auburn, Tennessee beating Duke, Florida beating Tennessee in the national championship.
All right. Okay.
We have.
I will tell you, AI has picked Florida in my AI experience.
There's a hot team right now.
Yeah, they were picked.
They look great. I mean,
they look really good in the SEC tournament.
Yes, they did.
They were picked by the Chat GPT. The Chat GPT with the gambling addiction.
There's some hope for me then if I match with AI, right?
Yes, exactly.
Well, it's easy to dunk on him because he's not here, but I feel like I have to put Kyle's picks out there.
Yeah, please do.
He has Alabama winning, which is not a terrible pick.
No,
it's a bit of a homer pick, but
But the other three,
and they are not great. He also has Missouri, and before I reveal the big one, what was the other one, Tommy? He had Missouri, Alabama, and there was some other off the wall. Gonzaga, that's what it was. Yeah, Gonzaga. Which,
Gonzaga.
Three.
This is not really Gonzaga's year, but okay.
But right, I mean, three. You know the names.
But give them the gem.
The gem of Kyle's picks is the 15th seeded Bryant Bulldogs
making it to the Final
Four
for the first time in NCAA history.
For the first time ever.
If that happens, y'all are going to have to do something.
Oh,
Kyle
we won't have to do anything nationally. He'll become
he will be the guy.
The NCAA
1,000%.
Yeah, I mean, he would if that were to happen, he needs to have that thing in like some major league.
He's
gambling.
Rhode Island.
Well, let's just show you that Bryant plays Michigan State in the first game, and they are 17.5-point underdogs.
Yes. 17.5-point dogs in that game. So
that's a bunch.
It's not great. But I mean, hey, if they win,
does he have a connection to this school?
No,
that was just his Cinderella.
I think he thought it was Paul Bear Bryant.
Yeah, that's the hypothesis.
I didn't know that Kyle was even a big Bama fan. Is he? I didn't notice.
Maybe so. He's a little quieter than.
No Dale.
Well, then,
former employees.
Dale was. Yeah. Well, it's always fun to do. I've
is Georgia in the?
They are in the tournament.
They are.
Did you pick Georgia to win?
I picked them for one of the 25 I've submitted.
Yeah. Okay.
One of the 25.
Scott, his kids won't eat next week, but he's in a.
Well, that was just for
he's in a few different.
That was just for a, I don't know, spray and pray kind of a tactic. I only submitted like 3 or 4 to the tournaments I'm in, but yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. I don't know. These things, they're racking up. I mean, I've got like 3 different ones that I can be in, and they're like, some of them are like, it's $40 an entry. I'm like, okay, that's a little rich for my blood, man. I don't know.
And I mean, the NCAA tournament is just an absolute crapshoot.
It is.
By like halfway through the first round, your bracket's done.
I want to have like a chicken picking versus AI and see who wins. I don't know. I think it could happen.
Well, it's even like Duke.
Or Kyle versus AI.
You're probably better off just having
Duke should definitely be up there, but if their stud freshman is still hurt and can't play, they're a totally different team there.
Yeah.
They may not get past the second round or first.
I didn't even know that they had a stud freshman who was hurt. I knew they had a stud freshman, but I didn't know. I didn't know they had one who was hurt.
You just about count on them every year having a
Cooper
stud
Flag.
Yeah, right.
It was a unanimous All-America pick.
It is a great basketball name, Cooper Flag.
Well,
he's going to make a lot of money next year.
It's a good one.
Be a Duke.
Yeah. Well, it's very exciting. It's a very exciting time. One of the most exciting times of the year in sports. So we'll see what happens here as we come back next week. We'll have some significant. View where we are.
Already crying.
Busted brackets already, except for Kyle. So, all right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and talk a little bit more about local politics and such. We'll be back.
just $6.50 a month for Mobile's daily news, Lagniappe Daily. Get signed up now at lagniappemobile.com and help keep Mobile funky. And we are back. Brady, you came across a story yesterday at City Council that wasn't really about City Council, but it was something that just absolutely floored me that I had no idea was occurring. Tell us about this.
People taking free trips in ambulance.
Free rides in ambulance. People using ambulances like taxi cabs.
Pretty much.
Basically, yeah.
Just trying to go, say from Tillman's Corner to, Mobile Infirmary just to get downtown.
Right.
And I'm like you, I had no idea this was even a thing because, people like you and I and everybody else in this room.
We probably wouldn't think about doing that.
We wouldn't think about it, number one, but
it would seem to be an expensive form of travel.
Exactly. And that's, but the people that are doing this, they don't care about how expensive it is. They're never going to pay it back anyway.
Right. They don't care. They don't have good credit. They probably don't have insurance. They don't care.
Right.
It might be crazy.
Very likely.
Probably insane a little bit.
Well, what really brought this to light is the Medevac ambulance service owner, Corey Hughes. He came to the council meeting yesterday and was asking the city for help about, hey, what can we do? Can we find these people? Can we, eventually throw them in jail if they do this certain amount of time? Because
give the listeners an idea of how much rioting is going on.
Well, it costs Medevac up to about $1 million a year. But the real kicker of it is there's one frequent flyer, if you will, or frequent rider, I should say, who has taken, just last year from January through December, 532 trips in an ambulance.
Insane.
By this one service.
And they have to pick him up more than once a day.
It averages out to about a trip and a half a day.
That's crazy. So he goes, so they come down to the council, they're saying, we need some help.
Right. But the city can't really do anything. There's a state law that if you're an ambulance provider, you have, and, goes to one of our houses, checks our vitals, we're good, but we demand to go to the hospital. They have to take you or else they end up getting sued. And before you know it, you're out of business.
Yeah.
And, the one of the suggestions thrown out there was, hey, can we put a limit on the amount of, times you can take a person? But, if you, say limit 3 times a day, and that third time there's not an emergency. Well, the fourth time is an emergency. Too bad, you've hit your limit, and then, you're dead. So, it's a huge issue. And I mean, even it's not just for the private ambulance providers either. It's Mobile Fire and Rescue's having the same issue. I think there was one person who, since 2019, has taken over 700 ambulance trips.
This is just
a lot of this seems like mental illness, though. I mean, is there not a way to address that through like probate court or having their
or driving them off and dumping them in the bay or doing something like that?
But seriously, if it's someone who's a hypochondriac and but they have not been committed or something. I mean, with the 500 and the 700 ride people, there's clearly.
Did they indicate to you whether there are people who are just willfully doing this as like, I need a ride somewhere?
Oh yeah. That tends to be the case for a lot of these cases that are not clearly an emergency. I mean, you do have some hypochondriacs in there that just think that every little thing they need to be taken to the hospital for. But for the most part, for these people that are just taking these hundreds of trips, Corey Hughes said that he tends to believe that it's merely just used for transportation, either to get downtown or get out to West Mobile, or could be some drug related thing.
I mean, how do you do that? I mean, it's just like, get in there. Do you pretend you're sick? Do you just like and then when you get there, you're like, thanks, fellas, I'm feeling better, and walk off.
Just walk
go
off.
To see my buddy over here. Whatever.
Yeah, I got the free ride. I'm here. Just thanks for the.
It's mind blowing to think. I wonder if this is like a more recent type of development, or if this has been
going on
for.
Hughes said that it is going on in other cities. I think he said Seattle has taken steps to address it, but he said there's still not any kind of set game plan to address it, because I mean, like I said, how do you really dictate how many trips a person can take without risking their life? It's a really touchy subject, but at the same time, these companies are just getting buried because I mean, you have this obligation to take people, and it's costing these companies millions of dollars.
And it's not even just the cost. It's not the cost either. It's also the other issue.
They have to sit with
the time issue
until they get admitted.
And that's tying up resources, and it's tying up the paramedics and everything from helping people that actually have
that
emergencies.
maybe actually need an ambulance. I think you just leave the doors kind of open and then take a hard turn, and they just
slide out the back.
And you just didn't see what happened.
No, whatever happens, happens. Well, then you've got a real emergency.
Then they're just riding down the street on a gurney. I don't know. It's insanity, though, to think that people are doing this. It's just absolutely crazy. It's a great story. I mean,
it's really hard to solve too. I mean, that's what's so interesting about it. But
well, I mean, and that's like Chief of Staff James Barber said. He said we can't do anything at the city level. This is not our issue. He said, but Mobile Fire and Rescue is getting hit with this same thing. So it looks like they're going to the city's going to try to spearhead any kind of changes in the state legislature. Yeah. But then again, I don't know how the state legislature is going to address it.
Well, you get into an issue, of course. You've got to make a call at the scene and say this person is worthy of being transported or not. If you make the wrong decision, then you got a huge problem. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, that's a fascinating one, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about it over.
And I hate it because I can't help anytime an ambulance drives by now. I can't help but think like freeloader.
Yeah, it's like playing free ride. Yeah. Scott, you've been working on a story from with the Otis French Jr. Killing over in
Bay Minette.
And he was shot by a police officer after a stop, and of course, in usual fashion, there was no body camera footage that was allowed to be out, etc. It was, the state law has said you can't release it, although this is a federal lawsuit. All of a sudden, this body camera footage comes out a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
and people can see it.
Yeah,
but there are further developments with that going on right now.
There are 5 videos that were published to YouTube under the name Otis Fringe Video.
Right.
An anonymous poster somehow accessed these videos and released them. During while the attorneys are arguing whether or not it should be released.
Right.
And also just on the heels of the state, kind of adopting police immunity even further. So all of that was like kind of baked up.
And the state law was passed. It says you can't release it. Nobody can release it. It's just it's not releasable anymore. So
come to find out, digging through some of the court filings that were accessible, is that there was an exhibit filed in January 1 that included an email thread. In that buried deep in that email
which attorney group included that?
Yeah, it was a joint filing status report. They both kind of
so both
teamed
sides
up on it.
Yeah.
It was the family's attorney, the French attorneys whose names on it, but I don't know how joint filings work. I'm sure they both signed off on it. But deep down into that email thread, there's an email from the police officer's attorney to the French family attorney, where they share the link to a share file and the password.
Yes.
Deep down, you had to.
And somebody read it.
And there's a online court database. It's called Court Listener.
Yeah.
It's a kind of crowdsourcing public filings because you got to pay for all this stuff.
Yeah.
And that was one of the exhibits out of the handful of ones. That's one of the exhibits that was you can just download for free and view.
Yeah.
Somebody shared that and downloaded it. So anyway, we. And then we got an email Saturday, saying that's exactly how
from the download from the person who put it out there, ostensibly. Although it was anonymous.
It was
anonymous, and they were basically. I think they probably read your first story about it. You said this is where we saw it. It was here, and they said, yeah, that's exactly how it got out, and sort of chastised the French lawyers for being upset about it. And
that was kind of strange. They were kind of protesting that it was leaked out.
The French's lawyers,
and I think they thought
the French family's lawyers were.
Yeah, I think they thought it was like a tact, maybe from the law enforcement pro side, to kind of make it to hurt their lawsuit in some kind of way.
Well, I think that you could probably look at that video in a couple of different ways. You could say how it does clearly show that French ran from him and wrestled with him and
right.
at some point
grabbed his
taser and all that kind of stuff, which tends to get you shot. But also
there is 12 to 15 seconds missing out of the footage. There's also the officer was informed that French doesn't like to be touched right before he goes and touches him.
Yeah, I mean, if that was okay for you, tell every cop, hey, don't touch me. I don't like to be touched. But I think the bigger issue is he pulled him out of the car and started frisking him and then immediately handcuffed him.
Yeah, I didn't understand that part of the video.
For a broken tail light. So it was a little bizarre. I mean, I think you can look at it for two different ways. I mean, to me, I don't necessarily think that it is a slam dunk great for the cops or great for the family either. I think both sides, to me, they look it doesn't look great for either one. But, the bigger issue to me is just that this is the whole issue of body camera footage being released, whether it should be or not. Of course, being in the media, I believe we should release it. Now, I don't think it should be released in the middle of investigations or things like that. But certainly when you get to the point where we're having a civil suit in a federal court, I think, I don't think there's anything harmful at that point that is coming out of it.
Yeah.
The public should be able to see what happened.
And these questions about the things we were just talking about, those details, this is why you want this to be out there, because you want to have these questions asked, should this have escalated anywhere close to what happened for a taillight?
He gets pulled over for a light that's out on his car, and the officer, basically says, hey, I'm not going to write you a ticket, goes back to the car, comes back, and then he says, hey, get out of the car. I want to show you this light. And when he gets out, he says, I'm going to frisk you just for my own safety. And the guy says, I don't like being touched. And he says, well, if it's for my safety, and then he frisks him, but he has him turned around against the car. And within a second or two, he just grabs his arms and handcuffs him. It's not he doesn't even say you're under arrest or anything like that. He didn't tell him he was under arrest. He didn't tell him anything. He just said,
I was confused by that. No, he was feeling his pocket, and then it was so weird because he was just everything was fine, and then it suddenly was hands behind your back, and so I didn't understand.
It looks very premeditated. I don't, it looks very much to me when I watch it, just my personal opinion, when I look at it, it looks to me like he knew he was about to put this guy in handcuffs, but I don't know. It's a small town. Yeah. How much do they know each other? How much contact have they had with one another in the past? Who knows?
On a separate note, these are also the questions you would like to have honestly argued in a civil court case, but because of qualified immunity, most of them never make it that far. Right. They get thrown out because police officers and officers of the state and the government are protected by immunity.
Yeah, they are. I think it's, it's important. We've had a lot, especially over in Baldwin County, there's been a lot of stuff that has happened that is pretty sketchy. And, certainly the case that we were on for a long time about Jonathan Victor, when we finally were able to see the video on that, it did not look good. And it didn't really match very much what we were told. And, and so I think it looked pretty bad overall. Yeah. And even a federal judge said that it did not look good.
Yeah. And, what ends up happening is that the body cam footage that gets out is the body cam footage that the police want people to see. And
it has typically been that way, and so it's been typical that you can't see the ones that don't look good. And then if something exonerates the officer, all of a sudden it manages to show up. So, and that's why I think there was maybe some suspicion that that's what happened here. Yeah. But it turns out it's just somebody out there looking around and who also said that they felt like this type of information ought to be public, and they wanted to put it out there. So that's where it ended up out there. Anyway, NAPI voting is still underway, Ash, right?
The nomination period. We've already had 50,000 votes for during the nominations.
And this is the nomination period is the time when you can write in people's names.
Anyone you want.
Yes.
And then once we get
you can vote for yourself. Your mama can vote for you.
Yes.
You
get
can
all your friends
do
and
all
family.
of it. Yes.
Get them to vote for you. At the end of the nomination period, we'll tally up the top vote getters in each category and name the finalists.
That's how people become finalists.
There's no open voting during the finals. So if you don't vote right now, you're not going to get in.
That's right. So people need to do that.
Once per day per category and vote nappies.
All right. Okay. Thanks a lot. Well, that's all for this week, folks. We'll be back next Thursday with the next episode of Lagnapod. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
The Lagnapod is a Something Extra publishing production. Executive producers are Rob Holbert and Ashley Trice. Music is by Some Pulse Sounds and Electro Animals. Only subscribers like you have access to this podcast. Tell your friends they can sign up at my.lanyapredbill.com. For advertising opportunities, please call 251-450-4466.